All right, Shalom. First off, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, a peace and salutation to the elect. Once again, this is Sean coming at you once again from the Baltimore branch of GMS. And I got another video, right? Of course, you know, I was doing research, and history is coming out and at a alarming rate. And every time you turn around, you know, the brothers, all the Akim, we coming up. Well, the Lord is providing us with masterpieces. I mean, the history is just like the scriptures say. Esau is being made bare because you have this narrative that it's for the longest time the so-called Negro, blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, mainly Negro, you know, so-called blacks were lazy and they never build anything or they don't own anything. Well, it's a couple of websites that I went on to dig deep on the census, and hey, Jake owned a lot, but it was just that we were brought over here to serve captivity, and we wasn't brought over here to prosper. And every time Jake built something, Esau found a way to at least to get jealous of it, or either tear it down or destroy it. And that's the curses, you know. And another thing I wanted to say too, you have a lot of so-called our own people. You got Jake telling, I ain't gonna say no names, but you got certain YouTubers like you know, guys are saying, oh, black and Negroes are wow, you know what I mean? Because but it's we're fortunate to know the truth, and a lot of Jake don't know the truth. But you got guys that that's out in the world that they making certain comments like, oh, blacks never own anything. You would expect so-called Edomites to say that, but you got Jake saying that to Jake. But here it is. I was watching this and I'm gonna play it. I'm not gonna play the whole thing. When you brothers get a chance, watch this clip, because I did research on this before. I'm not sure whether we heard about it in school, but it sounds familiar. It's called Seneca Village. That I believe another brother, the apostles, did a video on it. That the so-called Negroes at one point had before, because the tribe of Gad, of course, had the whole Manhattan, but at one point the so-called Negroes had land in Manhattan. But the narrative was they tried to say that it was like a dump, which it wasn't, because historians are finding out that this place was sort of nice, but Esau came in and destroyed it and made and turned it into a dump, you know, because Jake went in there basically with nothing and made it something, and this was a modern day. This wasn't nothing but gentrification, because what happened. I'm gonna play a clip, and we can you know, correlate with the scriptures. All right.
It's an iconic part of New York City, a piece of nature tucked inside Manhattan. If you've lived in New York or even visited, you've probably been here. But there's a part of this land story that visitors will never see. It's the story of what was here before the park, and the community that was destroyed to make way for it. In the 1820s, New York City looked looked like this. Most people lived in this area, Lower Manhattan. Pretty much everything above it was yet to be settled. In this map, you can see how different the geography was. These little lines illustrate what used to be hills in Manhattan. This was the countryside. Downtown was the opposite, Lower Manhattan.
And this was a little bit after they had pushed Gad out, because Gad and Judah are brothers, or Israelites. Gad belonged to the northern tribe, and Judah belongs to the southern tribe. And another thing too, I was reading a document. It's a beautiful document. I'm gonna come back to this video. That where is it at? All right, I'm gonna have to pull it up later. But it was a document stating that only slaves, at one point, the most slaves were natives and so-called African Americans. So what's that telling you? Israel was oppressed right along with Judah. Let's go back to the video and to make the video a little shorter. Salaki brothers, because now this thing don't want to load.
Manhattan was dense and crowded.
All right, we can skip all this and get around right here.
To Europe, and they see the Champs-Elysees, and they see Kensington Park, and they think that the city deserves to have a park of that stature.
On July 21st, 1853, New York set aside 750 acres of land to create America's first major landscaped public park, the Central Park. But the proposed area for the park included Seneca Village, along with thousands of other lots of land, home to about 1,600 people. In order to facilitate the park's development, the city's newspapers started to downplay who really lived there.
And you see that they downplayed it. And that picture that you just saw, that was after the fact that they didn't tore down the houses and destroyed it for the purpose of making it a public park, to gentrifying it, just to take over Jake land, because Jake had that land. On with the video though.
They really described these people as living in shanties and shacks. People of their base cultures were living off the land.
But that wasn't true. In 2011, Cynthia and a team
See that? It was a lie.
of archaeologists excavated in the former Seneca Village site. They came away with 250 bags of objects to analyze, which now live here in New York City's archaeological repository. These objects suggest that Seneca Village was wealthier than many assumed.
When we compare the objects from the homes of the people in Seneca Village with artifacts from Greenwich Village, an elite upper-middle-class neighborhood, in some cases they were using the same kind of ironstone plate in what was called the Gothic pattern.
Quite a few pieces of porcelain in Seneca Village, and porcelain was an expensive ware.
They also found other objects like a comb, a smoking pipe, roasting pan, and part of a toothbrush that probably didn't belong to poor people.
Toothbrushes were not common among the working class as well as the middle class until around 1920.
And the artifacts themselves were only one part of their analysis.
For example, from the census records from 1855, we know that there was a very high level of education.
Getting a high school education was clearly an important factor in the community, and that's very much a part of middle class identity.
The findings indicate that Seneca Village wasn't a shanty town. It was a working and middle class community, a growing neighborhood.
You see that, brothers? But I think I skipped a little ahead. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna play it about right here.
To much of its black population. This document shows the number of slaves in New York State. You can see how it went down gradually from
It's about right here.
It was yet to be settled. In this map, you can see how different the geography was. These little lines illustrate what used to be hills in Manhattan. This was the countryside. Downtown was the opposite. Lower Manhattan was dense and crowded. A few small neighborhoods were home to many of the city's poor whites and immigrants, and also to much of its black population. This document shows the number of slaves in New York State. You can see how it went down gradually from 20,000 in 1800 to 10,000 in 1820, and finally to just 75 in 1830. That's because in New York, slavery wasn't abolished all at once. Instead, it was ended over about 30 years. And as more free black people joined the workforce, racial tensions rose.
The people who were enslaved were now in competition with people.
The people who were enslaved were Israelites. Let me get the scriptures. Deuteronomy chapter 28 verses 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy power, to observe and do all his commandments, which I commanded thee to this day, that the Lord thy power will set thee on high above all nations. See, we were supposed to be on top of all nations. At one point we were, but going back to the famous book of Deuteronomy, what we did was we went otherwise. We did not hearken unto the Lord our power. So what happened was we were cursed, and one of the curses were what you see on the video. It said the Lord, verse 20. Well, I can start at verse 18. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land. You see that? So wherever we dwell at, it's going to be cursed. I mean, we might settle there for a minute, but look what Esau came and did. We came and built that area up, so-called Judah and the other brothers, because Gad had it. So that was cursed. Israel had that land before Esau took it over. So when Esau came in, they pushed Gad out. Then they brung the southern tribe over and pushed the southern tribe out. You know? Reading on the increase of thy kin and the flocks of thy sheep. They had I'm sure they had live flock, Verse 19, cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shall thou be when thou goest out. I know we always bring out the fact. I know the apostles bring it out, and other brothers bring just point out when using this as an example, when the famous comedian Red Fox, he was on his deathbed, and IRS, the so-called white man, came and was taking his rings off his body on his deathbed. But verse 20, the Lord shall send upon thee curses, vexation, and rebuke, and all that thou setteth thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me. Yeah, so everywhere, like another instance, Wall Street. This is only one incident that happened in this country that was hidden. Who knows how many thousands and thousands of situations this happened, but they just buried it underground, and they said, "Oh, you niggas are lazy. All you niggas want is welfare," and that's farthest from the truth. That's farthest from the truth. These curses are upon us because we was disobedient to the Heavenly Father. It's not because we're lazy or we don't know nothing or we're stupid, It's just that the Lord is the left hand side is working with Esau on this point because we went off. That's the reason. Verse 20. Yeah, I read. Yeah, verse 21. The Lord shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he hath consumed thee from off of the land, whither thou goest to possess it. Yep. And that's just one of the curses. That's just a couple of the curses that was put upon us. Let's go on with it.
Coming over for jobs.
That tension led to violence, and lower Manhattan became increasingly dangerous for free black people.
Imagine how. Imagine it's a shame. It's crazy, and it makes me. That's why I chuckled a little bit, because it makes it covering up the madness that I felt. Like, imagine how many Jake. Imagine what they was doing to Jake. You know, this was around a time when slavery was just probably around a time of ending in the North, not the South, but around the time in the North. And you basically probably could do. Edomite could probably get away with doing anything to Jake. You know, it was inhumane. You know, just imagine how many bodies and killing they did to Jake. You know, Jake looked at him wrong. He probably stabbed him up or shot him or raped his woman. Or you might be walking down the street with your woman and your kids to that village, and you probably had to pass an Edomite neighborhood, and they felt some type of way. They felt like some fuckery, so they probably tied you up and took your woman and raped her, and probably raped your kid too. That's how these devils get down, you know. And you couldn't do nothing about it, you know. And Esau don't have to pay for that. Esau not gonna pay for that. And we're the Lord's chosen people. You guys are sick that believe that Esau gonna get away with this. You think he's just gonna say sorry and you know, if that's the case, then 90 or 100% of people that's in jail shouldn't be in jail. I'm sure a lot of them said sorry, you know. Esau's gonna get judged. But let's go on.
Then, in 1825, plots of land started to go up for sale here, uptown. It was a way out. A black man named Andrew Williams decided to buy 3 lots.
You know, word gets out, black people seeing other black people and saying, oh,
And see, he bought it. He bought the lots. So he paid his hard-earned money for the land. But like we just read in Deuteronomy, cursed shall thou be in the land. He was cursed, as well as his offspring, because what? We are Israelites. We're not African American, black, Hispanics, Native American. We're Israelites from our specific tribe, whether it be northern or southern tribe, from one of our the patriarch, whether it be from Judah, Benjamin, Levi, all the way down to Ephraim, Issachar, you know.
there's a little bit of a community developing here. Maybe we can just fold into this community. So they start to move in.
After Williams, more lots filled up with black families and churches. And it was here, between 82nd and 89th Street, that the community of Seneca Village was born. Moving up to Seneca Village offered black families an affordable, safe place. It also gave them the chance to vote. Black men could only vote in New York if they owned property. Over the course of the next 3 decades, the community grew to nearly 300 residents. Records from the census show that they were laborers, domestic workers, waiters, and shoemakers. And they built dozens of homes, 3 churches, and a school for black students. Later, when Irish and German immigrants started moving into Seneca Village, it became unique for another reason.
It was an integrated community. It seems that people of all ethnicities were likely getting along based on the church records that were here.
Among the documents are evidence that some white and black families attended baptisms together, were buried.
And as soon as Jake let his guard down, you know, as soon as Jake let his guard down, what the enemy does, see, they probably had spies coming there to see how they doing or whatever, certain Edomites, and then go back and tell the other Edomites, oh, these Negroes are living better than us. Well, these Negroes from the outside, it looked like a dump, But I went in the house and it was beautiful. You know, Jake, a lot of times sort of like, jolly, and that's probably how they was, welcoming people in with open arms, But I know we saw a little bit of that, so Salaki on a video, but I'm gonna just play it through again for edification.
Buried next to each other in the same cemetery and intermarried.
The people who lived in this area were individuals who were trying to find.
Another thing too, that colored guy, when marriages happen like that, so-called colored guy, the Israelite Jake, it says that he married a white woman on a census. A lot of times that white woman could have been a Jake, because you had Israelite, you had it back then. The Israelites looked alike of the other nations, Ain't nothing new under the sun, But playing on, I'm gonna just let it play through for the Akim, and I'm gonna get the scripture and close it out.
A new way of life.
Over the next 3 decades, the population of New York City nearly quadrupled. Lower Manhattan could no longer hold everyone. The city's white elite were worried that the entire island would be consumed by development. They said it called for the necessity of a city park to give lungs to the city.
This came out of the elite being able to start to travel to Europe, and they see the Champs-Élysées, and they see Kensington Park, and they think that the city deserves to have a park of that stature.
On July 21st, 1853, New York set aside 750 acres of land to create America's first major landscaped public park, the Central Park. But the proposed area for the park included Seneca Village, along with thousands of other lots of land, home to about 1,600 people. In order to facilitate the park's development, the city's newspapers started to downplay who really lived there.
They really described these people as living in shanties and shacks. People of debased cultures were living off the land.
But that wasn't true. In 2011, Cynthia and a team of archaeologists excavated in the former Seneca Village site. They came away with 250 bags of objects to analyze, which now live here in New York City's archaeological repository. These objects suggest that Seneca Village was wealthier than many assumed.
When we compare the objects from the homes of the people in Seneca Village with artifacts from Greenwich Village and elite upper middle class.
Got a Rothschild working. I don't know if you brothers caught it, but got a Roth. They talking about the elites, what the elites did, but got a Rothschild work. And I don't know whether her name last today, because they switched their name, the elites. Their thing is secrecy, so they often switch their names, but they know about how the hierarchy is about women and men. They know what's going on. They in order on the left hand side. They know men should be ruling over women, giving women certain powers will destroy the nation. But let's go on.
This neighborhood. In some cases, they were using the same kind of ironstone plate in what was called the Gothic pattern.
Quite a few pieces of porcelain in Seneca Village, and porcelain was an expensive ware.
They also found other objects like a comb, a smoking pipe, roasting pan, and part of a toothbrush that probably didn't belong to poor people.
Toothbrushes were not common among the working class as well as the middle class until around 1920.
And the artifacts themselves were only one part of their analysis.
For example, from the census records from 1855, we know that there was a very high level of education.
Getting a high school education was clearly an important factor in the community, and that's very much a part of middle class identity.
The findings indicate that Seneca Village wasn't a shanty town. It was a working and middle class community, a growing neighborhood of black property owners, and an experiment in integration.
See that?
But to the white New York elite of 1856, it wasn't worth saving. A July 1856 article in the New York Times referred to it with a slur. the Eben inhabitants, after whom the village is called, have been notified to remove by the 1st of August. Many residents fought to keep their land by filing objections to their forced removal, but Seneca Village, along with the other settlements on the land for Central Park, was seized and destroyed. In their place, the city made pathways, built bridges and arches, and planted thousands of trees. Central Park was done, and Seneca Village was gone forever.
We can't imagine New York City without Central Park, but I'm finally grateful that the recognition of the pre-park history has emerged.
Today, New York is starting to reckon with this part of its history. An exhibition with information about Seneca Village is temporarily up in the park.
And that's basically most of the video. See, now, look, that's all you Negroes get, so-called Negroes or Latinos and Native Americans. That's all you get is a monument. You go through hell in this country, and with Esau do to pay you, you get a little monument. He take your land. You know, here it is. You know, you got history in the Central Park, whereas though, if let's say the generations went off, and those folks were able to keep their land, you know, you would still have Negroes owning that, you know, that land, passing down because wealth is built. Well, matter of fact, I'm gonna finish it out.
But the real legacy of Seneca Village is a story that's repeated itself again and again in cities everywhere.
Land, property ownership, that's how you get wealth, and you pass wealth on from generation to generation. But you're getting a bulldozer that comes through because a new highway has to come through, or a new hospital or development site has to come in.
Gentrification. The modern age. Nothing new under the sun. And that's what Esau did. Let's get these scriptures. And we're going to go to, I'm going to go to John. I'm going to go to John. And we're going to go with the 10th chapter. And it reads, "The thief cometh not but for to steal and kill and destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly." You know. So yeah, what it says, the thief come but to kill and destroy, and that's what he did to you Jakes. That was, you know, a lot of you Jakes that were back then, most likely, because that was in the 1800s. Some of you are back now, you know. Hey, some of the brothers might be in it. What happened might be in a camp, you know, because it happened up in New York, you know. But you know, people move and stuff like that and migrate for other places, you know. But that's in a nutshell, you know. Esau, that was an act of gentrification, an act of just another act of taking Jake land over and destroying them, you know, because, you know, land, that's a big part of wealth, as the lady, the Jake lady explained, you know, and she was right on that. She was right. So I believe she's the one that, you know, did the research on it and came up with the study on it, you know, and excavations and work on it, you know, archaeology work, you know. But I hope this was edifying to the brothers, you know. Till again, shalom.